Minister, Frankie is 2, and his parents, very worried, came into my office this week because a paediatrician and our own observation established that he has very, very serious developmental delays. He's non-verbal and he is showing all the signs of severe autism. They got a letter saying he would be assessed within the legally required time, and then they got a phone call shortly after that saying, from the Disability Network team, saying it would be 2 years before Frankie was assessed. Now that is a disgrace.
Thank you. Minister to respond.
Thanks for raising the question, and at the outset can I just offer my apologies for Minister Anne Rabbitte, who's not able to be here. The story of Frankie and the story, you know, we're hearing these the whole time, and the Minister is acutely aware of the current situation. The new standard operating procedure for assessment of need was implemented for all new applications for assessment of need from the 15th of January 2020. Since then, approximately 10,000 preliminary team assessments have been completed. Q1 of this year, the data indicates that there was 1,719 assessment of need reports completed. The recent judgment of Mr Justice Phelan in the High Court directed that the preliminary team assessment approach does not fulfil the requirements of the Disability Act. The judgment states that a diagnosis is required to determine the nature and extent of a person's disability. The implications of any ruling from the Court of Appeal in relation to other relevant cases will be considered as soon as this becomes available. The HSE will now implement a process for a revised approach to assessment of need. In developing this, the HSE had engaged with a wide range of stakeholders, including families, providers, staff and representative bodies, in an intensive consultation to develop a pathway for assessment of need that seeks to comply with the requirements of the Act, but also protects the commitment to the provision of intervention and principles as set out above. But I think what's different now that wasn't there before, it's important to note that children do not require an assessment of need and may be referred directly to their local Children's Disability Networks team. Minister Rabbitte obviously would be able to speak much better in relation to this subject, but she has worked so hard on this, receiving funding through the Minister to make sure that the assessments and needs were carried out. Many children then are referred on to waiting lists, and there's huge issues in receiving these therapies. Your particular case, I would ask you to refer it to Minister Rabbitte, and I'll come back in the next section.
I certainly will refer it to Deputy Rabbitte, but I've also been talking to one of the barristers who's taking a lot of these cases, and, and the situation is very bad. And to be honest, this story suggests that the establishment of the Disability Network team is not making any difference. It's just another layer. So we have assessment of needs, we have disability network teams, we've CAMS, we've NEPs. It's all fragmented, but in reality, while they might tick certain boxes, they're not actually doing the assessments and they're not actually getting the services. Now the point is, Frankie's future and the future of many thousands of other kids are at stake. Because if Frankie gets the early intervention now, he will be fine. He will be fine. If he gets the supports now, he'll be fine. The developmental delays, all that, and he can flourish. If he doesn't get them, his future will be seriously jeopardised, as will the future of many other children. Right? So new layers of bureaucracy. Disability network teams, by the way, are 28% understaffed. Right? This is the problem. And then I'll talk a minute about the psychologists and the lack of them and so on. But we need the law to be upheld and the rights of Frankie and other children to be upheld.
Thanks again, Deputy. And look, just to point out, because I think this is an important point, the assessments are being done. There was 10,000 assessments done over the last 2 years. Obviously, the court ruling, have challenged that now. And there was 1,719 assessments done in the first quarter of the year. But my understanding is the assessments are being done and children are being referred on to different multidisciplinary teams, and the supports are not there. Now, since 2019, funding has been provided by the government for approximately 475 new development posts, enhancing the network teams across the country. but it's a similar situation that we're seeing in a lot of the multidisciplinary teams. The teams aren't full, we know that, and there is the same issue in relation to recruitment and retention. Minister Rabbitte has taken to doing meetings in the various CHOs to listen to parents, to hear from those that are providing supports. I would have met with the psychologists recently, and I'll come back to that in a second.
A preliminary assessment is not an assessment of needs. That's the point, and that's what the judge ruled on. It was a way of appearing to tick the box of assessment without actually giving the assessment necessary, giving the diagnosis. Well then, I see the Minister shaking his head. So why do Frankie's parents get a letter saying, because this is tick box, because they have to, the law requires them, saying you will get your assessment by May. This is earlier this year. So the box is ticked, but then they get an actual call from a human being in the Disability Network team who says it's going to be 2 years before Frankie gets assessed. 2 years, right? So this is the difference between ticking boxes and actually doing assessments and then providing the services that are needed. And on a psychologist, I've raised this so many times, right? If you want to staff the teams, remove the barriers to psychologists being qualified and getting their doctorates, like extortionate fees. Now, no, that's not but we need joined up thinking. There's no funding for educational and counselling psychologists, impossible for people who want to do psychology, who want to help children like this, vulnerable children, to get qualified because we put barriers in their way.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of points. It is acknowledged that there are serious challenges regarding the filling of therapy posts due to the availability of new opportunities across the health and social care sector. And as I've said, 475 posts have been developed since 2019. But just to reiterate again, assessment of need reports will no longer be issued on the basis of a preliminary team assessment, and the HSE will engage directly with the families of those who received a PTA to establish if they wish to receive a further assessment under the terms of the Disability Act. But in relation to little Frankie that you referred to, early intervention is key. You're completely right, and 2 years is not acceptable, a waiting list for any child or their family. So if you would send on those details to Minister Rabbitte and I'll discuss it with her. Thank you.